Dalton Kincaid, Sam LaPorta, Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave. The 2023 NFL Draft tight end class was loaded. But who will be the best in 2024? We'll talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. DP, we'll kind of keep this playmaker edition kind of going, right, with all these flex tight ends. We are talking tight ends from the 2023 NFL Draft class. Which year two tight ends will have the best NFL seasons, right? We know that Dalton Kincaid, Sam LaPorta, they made noise, but would there be another emerging tight end? Then we're going to talk about tight ends in really tough situations. Then we're going to talk about some breakout tight end candidates. But man, before we get started with that, DP, why don't you hit them with a title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Keith, the best tight end from the 2023 draft class, heading into 2024, I got to go to Buffalo, and I got to go to Dalton Kincaid. And I know that Sam LaPorta was unreal last year, right? You know what I mean? He was a baller. 120 targets for Sam LaPorta. 120 targets with Amon St. Brown and all those other weapons that they had there. He still saw north of 100 targets, 86 receptions. He had 889 yards receiving. That's Sam LaPorta. For me, the reason why I'm going to Dalton Kincaid, he had 91 targets for 73 receptions, 673 receiving yards. No Stephon Diggs, no Gabe Davis. It's his show now, and I think that they're going to funnel this passing game through him. Down the stretch of last year, you know, I got the Buffalo Bills in my NFL region over at the Draft Network, and then shout out to our colleague over here at Locked On Podcast Network, Joe Marino. He talked about it on his show as well. Is that down the stretch, that even though Diggs was still getting the targets, the production was starting to come through Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, and the trust with Josh Allen in the middle of the field, and with Joe Brady, who you can attest to, right? A great offensive mind. He knows how to dictate the pace and knows how to spread the defenses open and find ways and find advantageous opportunities for his quarterback. I think I'm excited and hyped for what Joe Brady's going to be able to dial up for Dalton Kincaid, whether he's playing out wide, in the slot, in line, H-back, in motion. They did a lot of different things with Dalton Kincaid, but he was my tight end one coming into the 2023 NFL Draft. The route running, the pass catching prowess, the athleticism, the quickness. People knocked him for blocking. I get it. You know, he wasn't the greatest blocker. I get that. But he was a pass catching receiver. And I think in this offense that is devoid of a true number one wide receiver, I think he's going to be the top target. And I could see him having 120, 130 targets for 1,000 yards, being that top guy. And he has that type of skill set.
Yeah, DP. So we were right on the same page with picking Dalton Kincaid, right, as the tight end now to have the best year. But then you read off some numbers, and I believe the numbers were 120 targets for Sam LaPorta,
Yeah,
and 90 targets for Dalton Kincaid. And it gave me cause for pause, DP. I wanted to stop in my tracks and say, hold on, that's a lot of targets for a rookie tight end. Will they replicate it? So before I give my answer, I do want to talk about Sam LaPorta real quick. Highly skilled, highly talented guy. Is there a chance that under the radar that he is their number one receiving target? Like, is there a chance for a higher ceiling for Sam LaPorta, or will that be dialed back some? Because we're still talking about Jahmyr Gibbs emerging. We're talking about Jameson Williams, him playing an entire season. So is there a chance for exact replication, or do you think that's kind of going to dial back some?
I think it dialed back a little bit, right? Because of the fact of having Jameson Williams, who's going through his first full actual offseason without injury, without being suspended. Like, this is his first time to just be a pro in the offseason, get ready for training camp. No, I wonder what that does for this young man's mental, because he has to fought so many hurdles just to get to where he is now in the NFL. I think Ben Johnson's going to try and make a statement by getting him the ball a lot more this year, because he brings that explosive element. Like, we know what Amara is going to do. Amara had 164 targets last year for 1,500 yards, right? That's why he got paid. He's going to still get his targets, but I think that we're going to see more targets funnel to probably Gibbs and to Jameson. So I do think that 120 might come down to maybe 100 even. He's still going to be a highly targeted guy, but I think they will spread the ball around to their other explosive playmakers a little bit more in 2024.
Yeah, so and that's why I want to lean into how many targets he had in 2023, talking about Sam LaPorta, but I'm gonna go to the side you're going with, and this expectation that Dalton Kincaid's target share is going to increase. I think that, so this is what I do know from Joe Brady. Joe is a tendency breaking type of OC, right? Just from my conversations that I had with him at LSU, meaning that he doesn't like to be predictable. And that's why you started to see the emergence of Dalton, the emergence of Khalil, right? And he just kind of guys that can do it all. And Dalton Kincaid is one of those players for a tight end, right? Like, is he going to run routes like a wide receiver? No. But for a tight end, he can do it all. He can create a lot of different mismatches. You can put him in different places. You talked about the H-back situation, tight end, flex Y, inline, all the different things that you can do with him. So I'm gonna go with Dalton Kincaid too, DP. And I expect to be a high target. I expect him to potentially be a double-digit touchdown guy. And then I also expect that potentially this offense to look similarly to the Kansas City Chiefs, where they run the offense through the tight end. He's their main target guy, because I think he's also an easy target for Josh Allen. We always talked about the safety blanket, right? And as the tight end position has emerged and become, I guess, more of a high volume position, that we kind of got rid of the safety blanket term, but I think he still serves as a safety blanket also, right? He can do both. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why you'll see more of Dalton Kincaid.
100. I agree with that. And for him to come in as a rookie, and people were already saying, listen, I know we paid Dawson Knox, but he needs to be the tight end one of this team, going forward. That speaks volumes, because typically, our teams are, once we pay a guy, we need to get the best bang out of our buck for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Get the best return on investment. But you see the clear difference in receiving talent between these two guys, right? Dawson's a better run blocker. That's why I expect to see some 12 personnel out of them, getting both of those guys on the field, be able to attack the middle of the field, up the seams, get the play action game going, especially with James Cook. Brought in what's my guy? Ray Davis, aka Mark Ingram Jr., as I call him. Getting him from Kentucky would be big. So I think those are the two guys that Sam LaPorta, and I think it's just those two at the top in terms of being able to consistently produce and being in the positions to consistently produce. But you talk about situations, conditions, positions. There's some tight ends in some tough situations we about to get to, Keith.
Yeah, no, 100%. So let's do that, DP. You already segued way to it. You was about to make the transition. I'm gonna go ahead and finish it out, man. Coming up next, we're gonna just simply talk about some tight ends that are in some tough situations, right? Whether that's quarterback play, whether that's offensive philosophy, whether that's just their long time. Maybe they have competitors in the backfield with them, right? Well, not in the backfield, but in the tight end room with them. We're gonna talk about which tight ends that we believe from the 2023 NFL draft class are simply in tough situations heading into 2024.
Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your number one ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Why? Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your number one ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Tight ends in tough situations, Keith. I got to go to Vegas. I got to go to Sin City. Michael Mayer, you talking about an unlucky guy. You get drafted second round last year. Then to be sitting at home, chilling during the 2024 NFL draft, and with the first pick in the first round, or their first round pick, the Las Vegas Raiders select Brock Bowers. And he's probably just in the room looking around like, am I not here? Nah, right. For me, I think he's in a very tough spot. I think that he still can produce. I watched some tape on him. I'm like, all right, he still was able to he still made some plays for this offense, right? Mm-hmm. And they found ways to get him open and to free him up in the middle of the field, tough contested catches, getting open quickly, yards after catch, being a big, physical, burly tight end. And I'm like, I was excited. I'm like, okay, we get to see year 2. Him is like the top tight end option. And here comes Brock Bowers. And I think that's where it's like, okay, the new OC, Luke Getsy, is going to have his hands full trying to get both of these guys involved, right? He comes from Chicago, where a lot of people didn't like him, right? They didn't like his offense, his style of play, things that he did with Justin Fields. There was a lot of scrutiny about his spacing at times. But he got Cole Kmet the ball. Like, he was able to dial Cole Kmet up. But guess what? That was just Cole Kmet. That was one tight end. Can you get the ball? And also the tough spot is you got Jacoby Myers. You have Devontae Adams, who are going to be target hogs in the passing offense. Where is the room for Michael Mayer to eat in this passing game? And I think that's why, for me, he's in such a tough situation, man, because it's like he's a talented guy. I look forward to seeing him get more targets and more opportunities. But with Brock Bowers coming in, I think we talked about it right after the draft. Like, well, what if they just make him a big slot, power slot, right? Talking about Brock, and leave Dalton Kincaid as a tight end. All right, cool. Not Dalton Kincaid. Michael Mayer is a tight end. Sorry. But the question then becomes, still yet, where are you on the pecking order of targets? Are you just because you're the tight end 1, Brock Bowers is still in the field? Like, are we still not going to ignore that Brock Bowers is here? No. So I think he is, truthfully, I think he might be in the toughest position out of all these second-year tight ends in terms of trying to be able to get not get on the field, but get the targets to produce and showcase what he's truly able to do.
Yeah, well, DP, let's break this down, right? And let's get more in depth why, we're sitting there saying we're not sure about Michael Mayer. This is the thing, right? You brought in Jacoby Myers, you have Devontae Adams. That's 2 positions, right? A running back, that's another one, right? So you left 2 more positions, right? So you have Michael Mayer, you have Brock Bowers. So we talked about offensive philosophy. I just talked about Joe Brady in the last segment. Are you going to consistent and predictably be a 2 tight end, right? A 12 personnel type of offense to where everybody knows you're running 12 all day long, because that's going to cut into a share, right? Then the other side is that when you decide not to go 12 and you go 11, right? What situations are you going to want Michael Mayer on the field and not Brock Bowers? What situations are there, right? And it's not going to be passing downs, because passing downs, that's third down. You're going to want to take Michael Mayer off the field and give you a better receiver option, and then bring in another wide receiver, so that way you can have 11 personnel via 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 running back, right? So I agree with you. When you even break it down from a game plan philosophy, it's just going to be a tough out, right? Like, it's just a tough situation. And it's not that Michael Mayer isn't talented. He's a fairly solid player, right? He's more in, like we talked about, more in line with the Heath Millers, the Jason Wittens, the Todd Heaps of the past, right? Mm-hmm. But you get a dynamic athlete, DP, hear me when I say a generational talent like Brock Bowers.
I didn't hear that.
You get something like that. You have to put that guy on the field. You have to put him on the field, and you have to put him on the field early and as often as possible, man. So I agree with you with the Brock Bowers. I mean, not Brock Bowers, the Michael Mayer conversation. I'm looking at this list, DP, and I'm going to have to go with another player. We're talking about results. Darnell Washington. I think it's going to be tough for him also, and it's just because I think he's going to be on the field, but I think he's been boxed in to exactly what people kind of thought he was, right? And it's
six offensive linemen.
Yeah, and there's no slight on the team, right? Like the guy is a great inline run blocker, but I think he's going to do that. But then you also have was it Pat Fryermuth as the flex option for the tight end, and then you run and brought in tackles. You know the run game is going to be there. So I think that's what it's going to be. I would have liked to see Darnell Washington potentially try to evolve, become a red zone target, heavy play action type of player, but I just don't necessarily see that with as the Steelers are currently constructed and what they want to do, right? Because they not only drafted offensive tackle again, but what did they go? They drafted Zach Frazier at the center position, right? I think they drafted, was it 3 offensive linemen this year?
I think they drafted 3.
I think they went 3 offensive linemen. So they're going to run the ball. He's going to be on the field for that, but they're not throwing him the football if he's running the football, right? Just common sense. And then secondly, when you're passing the ball, it's the same situation we just talked about with Vegas, is that you're going to want Pat Fryermuth on the field because he's the more dynamic athlete. So it's just a difficult situation for Darnell Washington also.
No, I mean, definitely, right? Like it's all about the scheme and, bringing in with Arthur Smith. And I'm actually going to I have a counterpoint, but he's going to be I'm going to talk about him in the next segment with the breakout tight end spot, because I got a path for success for Big Darnell, but I want to talk about that on the next segment. But Keith, another guy that gotta go Green Bay, right? Talking about listen, there's a lot of young weapons as we talked about on yesterday's show. We talked about Jaden Reed, Octavian Wicks, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. Then they got Bo Melton, the receiver out of Rutgers. I think he's there as well. It's a lot of, and then you got Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Now it's not as tough because I think Tucker Kraft, for Luke Musgrave at least, this at the start of the season, because Tucker Kraft is coming up off I think either a pec or a shoulder injury. And he suffered late in the season or something like that, and he had surgery on it, if I remember correctly. So we probably don't see him right out the gate. So for Luke Musgrave, listen, turn this tough situation to keep it from being a tough situation. You better go out there and just ball out early in the season. If Tucker Kraft is on the bench or in the training room getting healthy, rehabbing that shoulder, let's say he's on the PUP list for the first 7 weeks, first 6 to 7 weeks, Luke Musgrave, go out there and show them why you are tight end 1, right? Go out there and be that big, physical, athletic playmaker to create that separation. Because if you leave a sliver of hope for Tucker Kraft when he comes back, because Tucker Kraft was good when they threw the ball to him last year. Run after the catch, big physical target. He looked like the guy we saw in college prior to getting, I think he was hurt his last year in college and everything. So I think that situation, if they're both healthy, it's just a tough situation because it's like, all right, who's the actual tight end 1 out of these two? They were drafted in the same class. Like Michael Mayer's probably pissed because y'all drafted the guy the very next year, top 15.
That's wild.
Wild, right? You're sitting there as Luke Musgrave is like, okay, Luke Musgrave was the 4th tight end off the board, the 11th pick in the 2nd round. Well, a whole nother round later, the 15th pick in the 3rd, here comes Tucker Kraft into the same locker room. And I know that those guys are good friends. They work together. They're a cohesive unit. But at the end of the day, the competitor in somebody wants to be the top guy in the room. And it's going to be difficult to figure out if both are healthy. So while Tucker Kraft is kind of rehabbing, if he's not ready to start the season, Luke Musgrave, that spotlight's on you, big fella. Go show us everything you showed us down in Mobile last February at the Senior Bowl, and go be that big target. Because if they can figure that out, because again, there's just too many weapons, too many receivers in that offense.
And if you're the general manager, right, you never say I have too many weapons. You did your job, but it's too many weapons. Like if you're trying to pinpoint, right, or if you're a player, you're like, hey, you know what? kind of get me out of here so I can play, and get more targets. Because like you said, you're talking about 2 tight ends and 4 or 5 wide receivers plus a running back, right? 2 running backs. So it's a great problem to have. You much rather have that problem than had the Panthers problem last year where you didn't have anybody. So it'd be interesting to see how that thing goes, and maybe they can turn some of these players into higher draft picks, right? Whether that's during the season or into the off season. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. And what we about to do, we about to call our shot, man. Which tight ends are going to be breakout candidates from this 2023 NFL draft class? We're going to talk about that coming up next.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and to Everyday Shot for being our everydayers. Keith, I said it, man. You talked about Darnell Washington being in a tough spot, and you made a really good point. He is in a tough spot. I think there's a path for success for him to be successful and create more passing opportunities for him. And that's with the new quarterbacks coming in, right? Russell Wilson's supposed to be the starter. What's the one thing people have always knocked Russell Wilson on? Throwing in the middle of the field. Yep. You know how you help that? You have a 6'7" tight end that can absolutely be a real big target for him to just put it up there too. And I think off the play action, like I think you talked about, they're going to run the ball. We're going to see. I expect to see heavy 12 personnel for them with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, out of the backfield, getting that downhill physical run game going, and then creating that play action pass off of it. And even if it's not Russell Wilson, maybe let's say it's Justin Fields. Same thing. You're going to run the ball. It may look a little different because you can go in shotgun and pistol and the different sets and still run the ball with the QB read option, the RPO game, different things like that. And for me, it's like, all right, what does that do? That creates easy access to grass off the play action for Darnell Washington. Because the one thing, this is a big athletic kid and young man, straight line. Well, Christian was like, okay, he's not going to be an outstanding route runner. That's fine. I don't really need him to be, right? I don't need him to be. What I need him to do is be able to occupy and dominate where I need him to dominate. And that's going to be the middle of the field. When teams go to zone, because Russell Wilson can run too. If it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, if teams go zone because they want to limit the running ability of either quarterback, the scrambles, the improvisational skills, that lets you find, hey, button hook right there, 5 yards, easy money, boom. Because you could take the athletic Pat Freiermuth in terms of the route run. He's better route runner. He's more fluid of a change of direction athlete, things like that. You can get him up the seam. You can get him on different routes. And underneath, you can use big Darnell Washington. And he makes all the linebackers look small. So it's like you catch that ball at 5 yards, he's probably getting 8. You know what I mean? 1st and 10, quick button hook on 5. Let's get 8. Second and 2, right? You know what I mean? 3rd and 1. Like it gives you the opportunity. And I think with Arthur Smith in that run game and his offense, he got the ball to, and that's the thing. He was able to get the ball to both tight ends when they were healthy in Atlanta. Jonnu Smith when they made the trade for him, and Kyle Pitts. Well, he got the targets to Kyle Pitts. They weren't quality targets, so he didn't catch all the passes. You know what I mean? Because they weren't there. But I think that he could do the same thing with Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. I think if he does that, Darnell Washington could be a breakout tight end candidate. Like, it's not saying a lot, 1,000 yards, but 500-600 yards receiving, especially in the offense or receiving room that doesn't have a lot of talent. I would say, if you can agree with me, let me know if you disagree. You got George Pickens, drafted Roman Wilson, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Even because I thought that's even when I watched the Steelers, right? I thought that they needed more well-rounded wide receivers, and they got rid of Deontay Johnson, but they drafted Roman Wilson, but they kind of still just leave them with 2. Right at the end of the day, kind of the same situation.
Unless Calvin Austin turns back the clock and goes back to college version of Calvin Austin, which for my stock and from my brand, I'll be all for that because I was a big fan of Calvin Austin. But unless he does that, they still have to get that receiver room fully flushed out with talent. And I think there's an opportunity for Pat Freiermuth to either be the big power slot in that situation, right? But also, I know, George Pickens said he's going to move around the slot a little bit too. But then, still have Darnell Washington on the field.
Everybody can't
Give
play
him
in the
ball.
slot, right? That's what we got to start telling players, right? And I'm not that wasn't directed at you, but
I
it's to the
know.
players, right? Everybody wants to play in the slot. But listen, there's only two of them, right?
Easy
Everybody
path
can't
to success, baby.
Yeah. And then listen, DP, if everybody's in the slot, then it means nobody's really out
Nobody's
wide,
out wide.
not in the slot, right? So it'd be interesting conversation, DP. But I think that's just players are like because they're starting to see how coordinators are getting these guys open, and instead of I want to be the dominant X on the outside, the big dog is like they're starting to like look at the math of it, right? Like I can go left or right, I can do this or this, right? Saying, oh, this is
there's no sideline. Say less. I'll take going in the slot.
Nah, for real, that's exactly what it is. But DP, my guy, I'm gonna go with for a breakout candidate. Schoon. I'm going with Luke Schoonmaker, man. Listen, I don't know what happened last year, DP. It just was not a great situation. I don't know if it was a Schoon trying to figure out the NFL, the Cowboys trying to figure out him, target share situations, but obviously it was not what I expected, right? Like, I was a big fan of Sam LaPorta. I really like Luke Schoonmaker also. That was two of my under the radar guys at the time when they, when we first started the scouting thing. I was like, both of these guys are extremely talented. I'm expecting them to step up. And one of the reasons I'm expecting them to step up, DP, is because he kind of has to, right? So I have the Dallas Cowboys in my region. They needed 3-4 things during this draft season. I thought that they needed another wide receiver, which they didn't go with. They needed a running back, which they didn't go with. And they needed an offensive line. They addressed the offensive line, right? So I think that they're going to they need another wide receiver, another running back. They need some more playmakers. Luke Schoonmaker is a good athlete, right? He's a good athlete. He's one of those guys where you can potentially put Jake Ferguson, kick him down, let him play more of the inline, put him as a big power slot type of player, and let him get open and do some different things. So I think Schoon has an opportunity, DP, to make some noise this year, maybe a full entire year, right? That's why we always say, and this is something I learned from the NFL scouts I talk to, right? But just also you kind of understand the dynamics of it is that you don't really judge your draft pick until after year 2, because year 1 they're kind of drinking out of fire hydrant, right? Where it's just they go, finish their season, draft prep, draft process, right? NFL draft, moving to a different city, and then the season is here, right? And they haven't even had an opportunity to sit that back and just think. Now you get an entire offseason, right? Then you get this ramp back up. You know exactly where you're going. You know where your house is, right? Like just little detailed things like that. So I'm gonna go with Luke Schoonmaker to take that next step.
Now that would be big for that offense, because talking about the Steelers being devoid of receiving talent or proven receiving talent, the Dallas Cowboys the same thing, right? You got Dallas Cowboys, fans, content creators, everything on Twitter. Can we please go call Cleveland and trade for Amari Cooper back? We should have never made that trade in the first place. We agree.
DP. They got emotional, man. Got emotional.
But there's a lot of hope that Jalen Tolbert can take a step. You got Brandon Cooks, who will be year 2 in this system as a wily vet. But I think a big part of their offense last year, as was Jake Ferguson popping out of nowhere, right? You let Dalton Schultz walk off in free agency and go to Houston, and then Jake Ferguson walks into the season with 102 targets, or ends the season with 102 targets, 71 receptions, and 761 yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. I think if the receivers are not getting it done outside of CeeDee Lamb, we might see some more heavier sets, and to where you get Schoon and Ferguson on the field at the same time, and then that's how you keep teams in. Teams don't want to live in base no more. They don't want to live with 4 down linemen, 4 backers, and 2 safeties and 2 corners. Yep. And if you stay in 12, they don't have a choice, because it's like, okay, yeah, I can come out in nickel and I can play a light front. I was like, well, that's fine. I mean, we'll run it then. You know what I mean? Cooper BB and all those, Tyler Guyton, the guys that they added to this offensive line, they got more physical. And that was something that we were really happy about from their 2024 NFL draft class. So if you want to stay in nickel, that's fine. We're going to run the ball, and then we're going to get play action. We got 2 tight ends that can threaten the seams, that can hit you on corner routes, that can do different things. Then we can get the ball to our number 1, who turned himself into an elite receiver last year in terms of CeeDee Lamb, who they got to pay, by the way. Figure that out, Dallas. But yeah, like I think that's why we didn't see Schoon really take that step. not only just the fact that he's a rookie, but getting Jake Ferguson taking a step forward. But if these other receivers don't do anything, let me get that 12 personnel going, get Dak Prescott some big targets in the middle of the field, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, give me some big plays over the top. Old man Ezekiel Elliott toting the rock for 3-4 yards per carry, and Dallas can feel good about themselves.
Yeah, that's what I predict will happen with DP. That wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. If you can hear my voice, hit that like button. Don't forget to comment and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On NFL Draft. I want to say shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. Like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's episode, on Monday's episode, we're going to get into the defensive side of the ball from the 2023 NFL Draft class as we get close to the training camp. What defensive end, what edge rushers, what defenders are we looking forward to be the best in 2024? We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.